everyone. So I wanted to give you a bit more background on the assignment that's due at the end of Module 4, which is the Literature Search Grid assignment. So the first few assignments for the course were mostly to provide you with a chance to conduct an academic literature review, right? So sort of the basics around searching for high quality, relevant sources and some ideas and strategies around how to manage those articles themselves. This week's assignment really starts to get at skills you'll need to begin writing a literature review. And more specifically, this week is kind of the first step in terms of, okay, once you locate some articles that seem to be pretty good, some studies that seem to be pretty good, how can you develop and organize summaries of those articles that you locate? So there are many different approaches and strategies that scholars use to take notes about and keep track of the research that they read. One that we're going to introduce to you here is by using a table or grid, and that's what you have to do for your assignment in Module 4. As you can see from the instructions here, we provide you with a Word or Google Doc template that includes columns for summarizing and capturing different components of an empirical study. And I think hopefully you can see that right here. Here's the basic template that we'd like you to use. I want to underscore a few things. So from a pragmatic standpoint, why do we recommend using Word or Google Docs rather than Excel or Google Sheets? So the answer to that is that although spreadsheets seem to be an obvious way to create a table, they're designed for mathematical tables. Trust me, I've tried to use Excel before and it gets really cumbersome and tricky when you're trying to use it for text-based tables. So tables with words, not numbers. So my strong recommendation is to always use Word or Google Docs when you're creating tables to summarize articles. And that's why we use that approach here in this assignment. So a few things. So right now you're really in the early exploratory phases of thinking about how you might do research on your problem of practice. So for that reason, you're going to need to collect and summarize and analyze pretty detailed information about each of the 5 studies you locate. And there's more details about what we're looking for you to summarize here in the instructions on Canvas, right? Please use that template that's provided as well. But in addition, this isn't just busy work, and I hope you don't think it's just busy work. So I want to give you a few examples of how I've used tables to summarize literature, both in starting to write a lit review itself, and then also actually including them in my manuscripts. And I'm going to use my own dissertation as an example. But first, here, let me show you. The first example is from, all right, the Coach one. Here we go. So this is a study I published, about 10 years ago now, with one of my former PhD students. So we were comparing the workplace experiences of faculty who were on the tenure track to those off the tenure track, like clinical professors and lecturers. So our study was a quantitative study. We were testing a conceptual framework that we had already developed. So we already had in mind constructs, key constructs we wanted to study. So as you can see at the top, I created the different column labels for my research team to guide them in terms of when they were doing their lit review. So I wanted to know, of course, what the citation was. And we were using a separate document to capture the full APA citation for our reference list. You'll need to include your full citation in your table that you submit for this assignment. Please do not just put the author's names in the citation column. But this was my table, so nobody was grading it, so that's what I did. Anyways, so then we were interested in knowing for each of the articles that we found, which specific faculty appointment types were being studied. So this one was part-time compared to full-time, whatever, we had our little abbreviations. And then which of the different constructs from our conceptual framework were addressed by the study. And so I had everybody list those constructs here. So we already had identified those, right? And then how the scholars measured those constructs. So for instance, right, autonomy, in a survey, how did these researchers measure or collect data about each of these constructs? How did they operationalize it? And then finally, what were the findings that the authors found related to each of those? And then just kind of some other notes over here. One very important thing, if you kind of looked through all of my summaries, our summaries here, is that you'll see the majority are in our own words. So this is really important because a literature review is really supposed to be in your voice. It's your analysis of what others should be done. It should not be a series of direct quotes. You really need to put the vast majority of what you write in your own words. And this is something that's very consistent with what the APA manual indicates as well. If you do decide to include quotes in your literature table, they should be for key ideas or definitions that cannot be put into your own words. I also recommend highlighting, if you do quotes, in addition to using quotation marks themselves, maybe highlight in a different color font or something like that. I usually do blue font in addition to quotation marks and noting the page number because, you know, sometimes things happen, whatever, and quotation marks can get deleted and you don't want to accidentally plagiarize someone. But again, the most important thing is an academic literature review is primarily your own voice, synthesizing and analyzing the findings of others. So it primarily needs to be in your words. All right, so the other example, as I shared, I was going to show you my own dissertation. Okay, so my dissertation was a study of the role of higher education in predicting whether or not someone would be part of the corporate elite. I'm not going to go into those details right now. It will take way too much time. As you can see here, it's 275 pages. But the most important thing is my literature review. And I use tables in two ways in it. So first, I actually reviewed, you can see right here, I reviewed literally every book and study I could find on the educational backgrounds of the corporate elite, dating all the way back to the 1930s. I summarized these studies in the text itself right here. So I said, you know, I was talking in my lit review about a bunch of different things. And I said, you know, most of what we know about them comes from a small body of descriptive studies. And my summary is in table 2. Overall, it shows that their educational attainment has increased over time. But the point is, though, then rather than kind of going through and talking about each of these studies in the text, et cetera, I included this table with all of the details. Basically, I included, right, of course, the citation. And then I was interested in this group of corporate elites. So I was interested in how many people they studied that they considered to be in the corporate elite, how they operationalized, defined that. So what exactly, who did they collect data from? And then what were the findings pertaining to post-secondary education? And as I said, there are only a few small studies, and I wanted to really capture, because my study was sort of the next one in line of all of these. So I kind of wanted to capture all of them here in this table, in addition to summarizing it in the text. And then finally, I use a table also in my literature review section of my dissertation, way up here at the start. And there it is. Oh, shoot, sorry. Okay. So my lit review was related to a couple of different theories that I drew from to frame my research. So there were 3 different approaches in the literature to conceptualize and make sense of business elites. And as you can see from this table, I summarized each of these quickly here, in addition to kind of talking about them in more detail in the text. And mostly the reason why there are like multiple different theories is, as you can see here, it was really interesting. Different disciplines approach studying this group differently. And I drew from elements from each of these theories in my own research. And that's kind of what I wanted to summarize in this table. So these are just a few examples here of how you can use these literature summary tables, not just right now, but eventually too going forward. You might be able to also pull out different components to summarize as part of a paper you write. But a clear and strong caveat: you cannot just replace your entire literature review section of your study or dissertation with a table. You have to analyze and synthesize these studies in a narrative form. But this way of organizing and summarizing tables can just be useful in terms of highlighting key components of your lit review. You're not there yet with your project, so for now, please just focus on the assignment instructions. So using the Word template provided in Canvas, you're going to capture the full and complete APA reference consistent with the 7th edition. Very important. Please make sure you're using the correct APA format and approach. And then in addition, you're going to summarize the key components of the study itself and analyze its strengths and weaknesses. And we ask that you please do this for at least 5 peer-reviewed studies. So yes, please let us know if you have any questions, and best of luck with your work.